Tonight, Sean Baker won 4 Oscars. Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Editing. Now, in the next week or so, there are going to be any number of hit pieces from the corporate media telling you that Sean Baker is a fraud, that Sean Baker is not all that. Well, I'm here to tell you that Sean Baker is sui generis. Anora is an amazing cinematic accomplishment. I know that Sean Baker isn't full of shit because, as it so happens, I interviewed him early in his career.
This leads me to wonder, you're 2 white guys from the suburbs. I'm curious if the actors also dramatically changed the story structure that you laid down from the get-go, because I mean, you're essentially trying to capture life into a narrative, which is always a difficult proposition. And I'm wondering if any of the improvisation completely altered the story. And I'm also wondering, you've got essentially 2 plots. Was one plot more heavier than the other at any stage during the course of this? And also, to throw another question at you, the actors you found over the course of your research, did you present these to Darren, Sean, when you did this? Or?
Well, let's see. Well, let's tackle that question about whether or not there was changes made to the script because of the actors' improvisation.
The story aspect.
Story aspect. Not really, actually. If there were we pretty much stuck to to the structure and to the plots that we had blocked out and we had fleshed out. But some of these scenes were based lightly on some true events. Like, for example, the whole scene where the sneakers are ripped off, that actually happened. So that was a scene that we based on our research. So the research process had already really allowed us to go off on our own and write out the script as the way that it's presented now. And as you see, it is plot driven, so we couldn't really sway from that. Right? Would you say? Yeah.
I would say that.
Okay. And then
but you did already. So
what was the other? Yeah, the last. What was the? I'm sorry.
Well, let's just jump on this one because that was a number of questions, and maybe we can get Darren involved with this too. Just if you have a fixed plot coming in from the suburbs, and you start talking with these various people, and you meet some of these potential actors, the question is whether that's really being authentic to the world that you're trying to present with your research.
I see. Well, no, that's not that's actually that's not the way it worked. I actually the way that I approached this entire film was I wanted to shoot at in that location. That was really the only thing I had in my head. I want to shoot somewhere in the wholesale district. What we did at that point was that we started doing research. We got to know the Lebanese shop owners. We got to know the West African hustlers. We got to know the way the business went down there and how people interacted. So at that point, we met Prince Adu. We really liked him. We thought this guy could be a leading man. And then we found the baby concept. So it was really, I never went in there with a set story and imposed it on anybody. It really came from developing it from after months upon months of research and interaction.
Well, it's also there in the photography because there's plentiful jump cuts in this. And this leads me to also ask in terms of any specific ground rules you laid down for the shooting that you did. And then simultaneously, since I'm trying to just pack as much as I can in this short amount of time, the child labor laws you obviously had to deal with here because you can only have an actor work, like a child actor work for like 6 or 7 hours.
Right.
You have in this case a situation where the mother of the actor is also plays the mother as well, and so I'm curious if that was a way to kind of get more time out of the actor in question. What of all this?
Well, there were obviously that's why the whole schedule was pushed to almost 35 days because of working with the child. But as you can see, there are scenes of the child sleeping.
Yeah.
So that's
off the books. Yeah, that's off the books.
Wow. And when we shoot in her apartment too.
Yeah. So because we were basically shooting in their apartment sometimes and stuff like that. That we were able, But But we did shoot for 35 days.
But this off the books thing, I mean, I'm curious to know more about this. What, you shot in the apartment, so
Right.
it technically is not quite, the kid's not being employed, and then also when sleeping.
Well, number one, this isn't it wasn't in any way a union shoot, so he wasn't, a SAG member or anything like that. But in terms of hours, if I was shooting the child, I never considered that him awake on set working.
Yeah.
I mean, we, despite it not being a union shoot, it also wasn't entirely a guerrilla shoot. I mean, we had our permits, et cetera, and
Insurance.
and insurance, and we really did try to observe a pretty tight schedule on Aiden, because I mean, a child can get taxed, a child can get sick, a child can, get hurt on a set of a film. So we were very, very careful about, how we handled him. So we weren't like slave drivers or anything like that.
Well, that actually leads me to wonder, I mean, in terms of... I wanted to actually talk about the photography. We were on that subject. There are a couple of moments in this film where color does, in fact, infiltrate the mise-en-scene. The point where you have the two sitting there and the entire apartment is yellow. I wanted to ask if it had already been painted yellow in advance. Second, there's, of course, the colored light thing later on in the film.
Right,
It's the one time where you kind of get out of the kind of gritty realism that you were going on about. And I'm curious what motivated the color, and why did you feel the need to get a little bit of color into there? Or was this entirely accidental?
No. Stefanik Youth, who did the production design, brought that idea to the table. And I think it was, and I went with it because I felt as if it really was like at that moment a highly stylized point where he was truly bonding with the child, and we almost see a POV shot. It was the one time where you're right, we break the style where you could almost consider that POV, where we get to see through the eyes of a child. And being that the whole film is sort of throwing a child in this chaos, the audience is almost seeing this world from the eyes of a child if they're not familiar with this world. So that, to answer that question, that was totally intentional. As far as color goes. Color was definitely a major part of it. We chose Levon's apartment based on those crazy red walls and orange walls. We didn't have the money to actually go ahead and, we built the set of the store, but we didn't have really money to go ahead and design other, paint and create other spaces. We had to find these spaces and enhance them.
So that's why you used a lot of gels for this, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of how much was built, that's interesting that the store itself was built. Was that the only set that was built for this? Or? Okay.
Right.
We went out looking for a shop that would rent to us that had one of the back rooms, and we had done some research with some of the places that had back rooms. We were like, so what do you think? Can we shoot here some night? They're like, yeah, absolutely not. They didn't want lights and commotion at night and drawing in attention. So. We tried to find stores that at least were abandoned, that they were renting, that had these back rooms while those back rooms are done away with. And then we tried to find larger stores, and still couldn't find anything within our budget. People, obviously, they want, $5,000, $10,000 a month for storefronts here in Manhattan. And we had about $1,000 to work with.
Wow.
So maybe $1,500, something like that. And so I found a place that would rent to us for a week. And I brought Sean there, and the place was, maybe twice the size of this room.
Yeah.
And I brought Sean there, and he's like, no, we can't do this. He's like, the store is too small. And I said, well, what if we made it bigger? And he's like, how the hell are you going to make a store bigger? And I said, well, what if we built a wall on wheels?
Yeah.
And so we built this wall on wheels in the back of the store. So every time you actually enter the store, that wall is against the back wall. And every time you're in the back room, that wall is pushed all the way to the front.
It was like almost shooting in a studio.
Yeah.
Creating our little set.
Yeah. So
But everything looks bigger on it.
Exactly.